Good morning. Okay, this is what we're doing today is we are looking at the wonderful earthworm. This worm is preserved, so he's dead. But I really want to encourage you to go out and find a live worm out there somewhere in the world. Go dig up in the ground, find a real worm that's alive, and watch it. They're such fascinating creatures. This guy, although dead, can teach us a lot. So he has been preserved, so I can cut into him and dissect him and learn about him. So we are using these creatures to learn. We're not just killing them. We are learning from them. So the more we can learn, the better. All right, so first off, when we're looking at any animal, we need to know the 4 planes of symmetry. We need to know anterior, posterior, dorsal, and ventral. And we need to know that because we need to know which area to cut when we are going to cut so that we know the structures inside. All right, so when I look at my worm, I can tell he's one big tube, right? He's a long cylinder, and that the ends do look slightly different. I'm going to start at this end here. We can see, well, maybe I need to zoom it in just a little bit. Zoom it in, go to quick focus there. All right, are we focused? Try to focus one more time. All right, so as I roll this worm back and forth, we see that one side is lighter than the other side, that's darker. The darker side is the dorsal side. So that's dorsal, and that's ventral. If I move to the tip to the end, and I turn him, focus again. Oh, look, it's like he's smiling at you. Oh, see that little smile? That is actually his mouth. Okay, so that opening is the mouth. And this little part right here, it looks like the lip, right? That is called the prostomium. Prostomium. And then mouth is the opening, and that is found on the anterior end of the worm. So if I take that worm and I go from the anterior, the head region, okay, and I move down the worm, I have to go a few segments down, and I find this area right here. See, I can kind of see it's a little bit different color. That is the clitellum. I want you to read about the clitellum. I'm going to roll the worm around. The clitellum is used in reproduction. Okay, so can you see it right there? Clitellum. It's a nice, easy to recognize structure, and you can see this on living worms too. All right, now as I move posterior from the clitellum, I start to see this little line right here. A little easier to see as I move down. It's tricky on my preserved worm, but that line right there is the dorsal blood vessel. And when I'm dissecting, I want to make sure that I'm cutting on one side or the other side because I'd like to be able to see that dorsal blood vessel. It's underneath the skin, and we can just see through the skin to see that. Okay, so it's going to go all the way down the worm until we get to the other end. All right, speaking of the other end, now I know it's a preserved worm, but it is flat or flatter on the posterior end than the anterior end. So be aware of that. Just kind of take a look at it. And again, a live worm is really what you want to look at. But this is pretty true. So see how kind of flat it is this way. And if we look at the very posterior, right, this is the posterior end, dorsal, ventral, posterior. If I turn it and look at it, make sure I'm in focus. There it is. That opening there is the anus. Okay, so let's put my worm down. Focus in. I might need to zoom out just so I can see everything. We can see, oh, I made a big circle out of them. All right, so this is anterior, posterior. The opening on the anterior end, mouth. The mouth is got that prostomium lip on it, that very first segment. And then the posterior end has an opening. That's the anus. We can do ventral and dorsal. And the clitellum is a little tricky to see, but I know it's right there. That's it.